Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Passionately Wrong podcast. I'm James Bellerville, and I'm here together with my friend and co-host, Randy Searles. And today we are going to go into a topic that is probably of interest to some of you, and maybe others have never even thought about it. But it is something that is much more common than you might realize. And I think, at least anyway, the topic is self-publishing, Randy. And so I want to ask you a basic question for myself and for anyone who's watching and listening. And that is, what is self-publishing? Is it a big deal? And who's doing it and why? So just give us the big picture. What the heck is this? Is this what I used to think of back in the olden days of a person writing a vanity book and then getting a few copies printed for themselves so they'd have something on their bookshelf behind them? Or what is it? What is self-publishing?
The vanity books are still alive and well, and there's companies out there that cater to that and will charge you a significant amount of money depending on which company you go to and which company or in which you actually want out of them. Because some of them are a la carte service. So you could say, I can do the cover. My son drew the cover, so I don't need a cover. But I do need editing and I do need formatting, and then I need you to distribute it because I can't figure it out or something like that. But those things, depending on what you want done in the company, they can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $45,000, because some of them will walk you through the art of writing it and then hire a ghostwriter to write it for you. And you're paying for all of that. And some of them will just do what you want. Like you said, if you don't want the cover, you just want formatting, whatever. So those are definitely out there, and you need to be a little careful because they don't always do what you think they might do. And they aren't necessarily always working in your favor because they are a profit business. They're telling you what they're going to do and they'll do what they want to do, but it might not be the best thing for you, I guess, is the answer. But so self-publishing now is traditionally not going through at least the big 5 publishing companies that are out there, of which Simon Schuster and a bunch of other ones. And those big 5 have like sub publishing companies that specialize in fantasy or science fiction or women's fiction or something like that. So that it's hard to see. For people who don't know what's going on, it's hard to tell if you're in one of the big 5, you're a sub, or you're actually not in the big 5, because there's other ones outside of the big 5 that are smaller companies. But traditionally, those companies would, if you had an idea, especially a nonfiction idea, they would say, that's great. So the book I worked on, Operation Pineapple Express, nonfiction book about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, written by Scott Mann. It was his idea. He brought me on as a co-writer, structural formatter, helper, program manager. I don't know. He called me a project manager ultimately, but I did a little bit of everything. And I did actually write a couple chapters in the end as well. But the thing was, he got a book deal. And this is what they're famous for. He had a book deal. He said, I got this idea. This is why I'm the best guy to sell it. Here's a sample chapter. He sends it in. It's called a book proposal. He finds an agent. The agent says, I can sell this. That agent, because it was like less than 30 days after the evacuation of Afghanistan, that agent's like, this is in the news. Everyone loves it. Everyone knows what it is. I can sell this. And before you know it, he's got 8 or 10 publishing companies bidding on it. Okay. And then he gets a lucrative deal. They pay him in advance, and he has so long to write it because the publishing company makes a plan. And that's one of the big things about the publishing company, right? As soon as they write it, do a contract with you, your stopwatch starts. They're like, hey, you need to give us the first draft on this date, because they start making a calendar. Hey, we get the first draft. We're going to edit it. We're going to give it back to you. You're going to edit it. We're going to give it back 3 or 4 times. Meanwhile, our marketing company is going to start figuring out what we're going to do to launch it a week, month, 2 months out to get it popular. And we're also going to work on the cover with you. And we're going to work on the title. We're going to work on the blurbs, and we're going to work on you getting on interviews on podcasts and news and stuff, especially nonfiction, because it's got politics involved and things like that. And so ideally, that's what the publishing company is going to do. And conceivably, there's no upfront costs. They've said, you have an idea. It's a great idea. We think you can write it. We have faith in you. We think we're going to make money from it. So we're going to invest money in you and the process so that we get money on the backside. Now, a lot of these big five companies are going to take 85% of your royalty profit. All right. Give or take. And of course, big authors like Stephen King will go, I'll give you 20. And they're like, we'll take it because we know you're going to sell 1,000,000 books on the first day. Probably Prince Harry got a deal like that. Okay, I'll give you 3%. It's like 3% of $1 billion. That sounds like a great idea. But that's few, and most people aren't going to get those deals. They're going to get the deal where they put this huge advance up for you to live off of while you're writing it. They pay for the cover, they pay for all these editors and all this stuff. And then you end up not getting royalties for a long time because you have to pay your advance out of your 15% that you're getting, 50% of your profit that you're getting for every book you sell or whatever. So that's traditional publishing. And I would also caveat that with, from my experience, the marketing piece of it is not as big as as robust as it once was. And they're not as interested in pushing your book out as you are. So your agent's going to get a couple percentage out of every book. The publishing company is going to get a couple percentage out of every book. If you hire a ghostwriter / developmental editor, he may negotiate for a percentage instead of you paying him amount if he believes in the book. And then, so you're maybe giving a percentage of that away on him too. So there's all these pieces of the pie that are getting away from you when ultimately everyone's going to push the book for the first week or 2 or 3 or month, because that's when you sell the most books. And then they're all going to move on to their next project. The publishing company is going to look at their next bestseller book that they're trying to get out there. The developmental editor or ghostwriter is going to work on their next project. The agent's going to work with their next guy. And you are left with the majority of the marketing after that, for the most part. And in some cases through the whole process, because they already got their big bulge of sales. And so and then this is the comparison with, I'll let you talk in a second, James. I know I see you look on your face, but when we get into self-publishing in a minute, you're in charge of all the marketing. But in some cases, you're in charge of all the marketing on both sides, on the traditional and the self-publishing, just because after the first month, no one really cares as much about your book as you do, because you're trying to get your 15%, but you're only working for 15% of the royalties. Some people can get bitter, just like all these people like Taylor Swift and people that are putting these records out and then saying the people that put them out there took all their money. Those people took a risk. They hoped you would make a lot of money, and not the more popular you get, you do, but they invest a lot of money in a bunch of duds before you. So same thing with the publishing business. Not every book gets the publishing money its back, gets the publishing company its money back. So everyone they get a good one that pays them back, they're like, phew, now we can find the next winner. But go ahead, what do you got?
I just want to perhaps put you on the spot for a moment, Randy, and ask a question. You've been involved with this world for a number of years now, the editing side, the writing side, but also obviously the publishing side. And you've seen a lot of different clients come, and you've seen different experiences from people who probably never finished to the ones who get on to becoming a New York Times bestseller. Would you say that it's a good idea to pursue publishing a book if you wish that to make money? Is that a good way to make money, or is it unlikely that you're going to make a lot of money? I don't know if you could answer it so broadly. And if not that, what are some of the reasons that you've seen that you thought were good reasons for people to seek to publish their work? So I want to explore the motivations a little bit. We talked a lot about money so far because it is, of course, important. And these breakdowns of who gets what is super important. But is that the reason people write books? I know it's a hope, probably. Hey, I'd like to get paid for this. So maybe you could address that aspect of it a little bit. What are your clients, for example, hoping to get? How many of them get what they're hoping?
So I got, funny, I talked to a client yesterday and he said, I forgot who the quote came from, but he was like, there's 3 things that everyone should do in their life, right? One is have a child, and one is, do good deeds for other people. And the other is write a book. I don't know who said that. And so I'll have to look up that quote. But so I'd say the majority of people come to me think that they're going to make a lot of money with their book. And I try to establish that in the beginning. I don't want to take someone's money, because people pay me $2,000 to $4,000 to look their book over and give them suggestions on how to make it a better book. And if if that's their whole reason for writing this book, I'll say, look, most books, we can put this, a link to this survey that came out a couple of years ago, but like 80% of the books don't make more than $5,000, right? So if you spend a year writing this and then you spend $4,000 on me to make it better, and then you spend $500 on a cover, and then you spend some more money on formatting, and then you pay $3,000 for a copy editor, if you don't really make $5,000, you lost money in that deal. So if you're doing it to just make money and you think you got the best idea in the world, you and a lot of other people have come to the publishing world and thought the same thing. And most people don't make as much money as they think they're going to make. And then one of the problems is, especially with traditional publishing, is you make a very low percentage of what every book that sells, you only get 50. So that's why self-publishing is a little bit more interesting. It's in one way, it's faster. You don't have to find an agent. Like so many people, I don't know how many books or articles I've read that have talked about artists or authors, even famous authors, saying they sent J.K. Rowling, for instance, sent their book proposal query letters was called to 50 different people and they all turned her down. How long do you think that took? At least a year. And so you got to find an agent. You got to find a publisher. Then, like I said, even if you have the book written, it's not coming out tomorrow. Probably it's coming out at the very soonest 2 to 3 months, but more than that, because they're going to put a publisher or an editor on it who's going to say, hey, make these changes. And then that may go 2 or 3 times. And then they're going to do a copy editor. And then they're going to do a formatter. And what's the cover going to look like? And all these things. Ideally, they're doing some of these things simultaneously, but it takes time. So if you end up self-publishing, which should be a little bit faster, once you finish the book, you still got to do it all yourself, which means you have to stop writing so you're not writing your next book. So while you're doing that, you're figuring out what the cover looks like and you're formatting it, or you're hiring someone to do it, which means you're getting more in debt behind the power curve with your money. So that's one reason. So a lot of people come to me and say, hey, I got this great idea for a book. Why don't you write it? I'll split it 50-50. And then I'm like, hey, do you know that 80% of books don't make any money? And so 50% of nothing is nothing. And I know how long it takes to write a book. And I don't think I want to take that gamble. I'm not going to pull that lever on that machine. But if you want to pay me to write it, I'll do that. And so I have ghostwritten, co-written, edited bestsellers, and people are like, oh, you must be rich because you're getting a percentage, right? And it was, no, I didn't get it. Oh, you wish you had. It was, no, because I've edited, ghostwritten, and co-written over 50 books, and only a handful have been bestsellers. And there's no guarantee that and I'll explain what a bestseller means too in a minute, which doesn't mean you sold 1 million books. And even a bestseller maybe wouldn't have earned me back all the money that I would have earned if I had taken. I did this one book. One of the first books I edited 8 times for 10% of, I didn't know all the stuff I do now, but hey, it was a deal done by a variety of people together. Hey, can you edit this guy's book? And we're going to publish it and you'll get 10% of the profits. Yeah, that sounds great. 10% of the profits. Let's do it. I didn't write the book. I was just going to edit it. I edited 8 times. 8 times. That's like over $10,000. It's like $15,000 of edits that I did this book. I invested a lot of time, couple 100 hours or so into this book. And I still haven't seen any royalties. That's $15,000 I could have earned. So that's the story of my life for all 50 books that I edited and co-written and ghostwritten over the last year, or the last 7 years or whatever. That's what I make to live off of and eat with it. And if I'm writing someone's book and it doesn't make any money, then what am I going to do? So I don't regret not getting a percentage of my bestsellers. I'm not sure I would have made the same amount of money on the other end anyway. But so profits one. The vanity thing we talked about. Some people I've ghostwritten a lot of memoirs, especially for military people, and I've edited a lot too. And they just want their story out there. A lot of them, if they made money, some of them were already significantly wealthy. They're 80 years old, 75 years old, and they wanted to leave a legacy for their family. And that's what they wanted to do. That's all they cared about doing. and that's fine. And then we help them make a good cover. I think we talked about my friend who we put his father's book up there and worked on it for 2 years, and we published it. And a week later, he passed away. And he really he wanted a legacy book out there. If it helps somebody with leadership skills in the military or help them have a better career, then that was great too. But some people just want that. And then I'm helping a guy right now, or just goes through his book, and he wants his book his is a memoir, but he wants his book to launch. He hopes it'll help launch his TV show. So he's doing it for business reasons. And there's a lot of people think that if you don't have a book, if you have a business, you don't have a book about your business, you're not completely there yet. So they want to have a book about their business, or a book that supports their business, or maybe they have training programs and this is their foundational book about all their concepts and things like that. So those are the three big reasons that people come to me. I've had people come to me and say just what I told you. I have this great idea, write it. I'll split the money with you. It's going to make millions. And I'm like, why don't you just take all the millions and pay me the 5,000 that to help you write the book? So did I answer your question for that?
I think it does. And I could understand whether it's 3 or 4. I heard the money is one. Vanity is maybe a harsh word, vanity/legacy. Let's say that's the number 2. And then this idea of it's going to support a business in a variety of fashions. I understand all of those. And it's okay. I'm impressed by how creative the human condition is, more than I thought. And it's easier than ever to create things. So there doesn't have to be a grand scheme or plan. Oftentimes I think people fall into a creator role. They start doing something, then it turns into something else. And then all of a sudden they've got this content that they've created and it's supporting something else. So I suppose I could absolutely accept that someone gets into writing something without really necessarily knowing where it's going to go. They just have this stuff pouring out of them and they want to tell their story. So there's also this urge to create that I imagine is very real.
A lot of what I've just spoke about, except for the financial part, but the people who write fiction, they have stories to tell, but they really hope that they can do that for a living. So they want to make money. Most of the fiction people want to make money. The nonfiction kind of fall under one of those other 3 categories I just said. Now, most fiction authors can't make a living writing, and almost most of them, even the ones that make a living writing, don't make a living writing one book. There's a very really great book group called 20 Books to 50K, with the concept of if you write 20 books and you market them correctly, especially in today's world of social media and marketing and all these other possibilities, and you market them correctly and you're selling so many dollars of each book every day, you can make 50 grand or more a year. And that's a livable wage. Maybe when the concept was 10 years ago. So it's 50,000 a livable wage now. Is it a comfortably livable wage? I guess it depends on where you live, but you can write anywhere. So you can go down to Panama, live down there and write for 50 grand a year if you want. So that's the idea. It's a really great Facebook group. They don't allow any people to sell their services or concepts or courses or books or anything like that. It's just a sharing community about what has worked for people and what hasn't worked and what new concepts are working better, from TikTok to Instagram to Amazon ads and Facebook ads. And they have all these people sharing information, and they have conferences every year in Vegas. There's a conference here next week where I live in Spain, which I'm going to attend. Smaller conference. The Vegas one has tens of thousands of people that go to it, and they have good.
Oh, you said, I'm just still stunned a little bit by 20 books to 50K. 20 books is a lot of writing.
But
or
people
am I misunderstanding the concept?
No, you're not.
It's not that you need to be a regular creator and regularly put new stuff out in front of your fans and build this sort of thing. And it's not an overnight thing, right? I'm guessing it's not 20 books to 50K in 20 minutes. It's 20 books to 50K and
it's 20 books to 50K. And so you're writing 20 books over a long period of time. And ideally you start when you have a job before you are of retirement age. You've written 10 books by the time you're 40, and then you can live off of that and your investments until you get the other 10 books. But the thing is, though, the thing that they really encourage to be successful in this is your right to market. So they give you techniques and strategies to research the market of what people are reading. And obviously there's going to be twists and turns, and people all of a sudden decide they like this over that and things like that. Like superhero books, but when Marvel was first starting out and becoming popular with Captain America and the first Iron Man movie, the first Avengers movie, those were probably really popular, right? So the market changes, and they're giving you strategies on how to look at the market and say, I got an idea. Is this marketable? And you can look at these software that are available out there and say, this is a uptrend market. This is what the top 10 authors in this genre have sold lately. And so you could say, I'm going to get in that market. Now, romance.
By the way, you are just hearing this is making something very clear to me, Randy, which is that if you want to write for a living, you are selling a product. It's not about your creative integrity as an author, although hopefully you can maintain that. It's actually quite different. You're selling something and you better know what the market's willing to buy. So this emphasis on right to the market, I understand. It seems I write other stuff online just for fun. And the fun part to me is very important. I felt like I had to write only what I thought people wanted to read. On the one hand, why aren't you writing what people want to read? But that's not why I write. So what do you do with someone who says, look, I have an idea. I like my idea. I don't care if people read it or not. Or do you not get those people?
No. So you say you need to write what you like to write, or you're not going to write very much. There's people that have forced themselves to write stuff they don't like, and it's just not any fun. You can only do so much. There's a really good movie that just came. Oh, it's a really good book. I forget the name of the book, but there's a movie that came out on Netflix. It's based on. It's a little risque for our podcast, but let me explain. It's about a educated Black writer who's been writing these intellectual books about intellectual Black people, and he can't sell them very well. They don't sell very well. And his agent's like, hey man, can't you just write about the Black experience? That's what everyone wants to hear about. And he's like, this is my Black experience. I don't even get it. And he's watching some kind of daily news show, and they got a Black lady on there, and she's like, she's talking very eloquently, and they're like, oh, your book was so meaningful. It really felt like we were in the culture. And she's like, yes, that's right. And wrote it for. So would you mind reading the first chapter or the first couple pages? And then she reads it. Yeah, get the hell over it. Some Blackisms and things like that. And the Black guy who can't sell a book, he's like, this is a baloney. Okay, I can write that. So he writes a book. It becomes a bestseller. He writes it as a satire, and everyone takes it seriously and thinks that it's a biography of his, or that the lived thing that he wrote. And so he has to act like in order to market it, he has to act like it's very funny. And the movie just came out, and I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to watch it later. But you can write whatever you want. You're only going to make enough money if you can market it. And if no one cares about the market, if you're going to write about time bandit ninjas that are babies or whatever, and there's a small market for that. You have to understand that. Now, maybe you'll change the market. Maybe everyone will love it. I don't think anyone thought Harry Potter was going to be as popular as it is. The next big book that just came out is Fourth Wing, which is about a school for 20-something dragon riders. And so that's a big hit. Twilight, the vampire thing. These are all things that started trends, and there was things before it too. So what made that one go off the loop is everyone tries to study that and who's going to get the next trend. But romance has been in the top as far as writing to market. Romance has been at the top forever. All right. It sells the most books in romance. I don't particularly like to read romance or write romance. I will never probably write romance. I will write probably fantasy or science fiction or military thriller, which are also romance has got 50% of the market though. So that means the other pieces got smaller parts of the market. So when I write those, and there's successful people who write science fiction, fantasy, they sell a bunch of books. And there's a couple romance authors that are always at the top of the list. There's one romance author. She's always got 5 or 6 of her books in the top 20 New York Times bestsellers all the time. They're always on there, and then they make movies of them. and she's making billions of dollars a year off her romance books. And she's taking up a quarter of the New York Times bestseller list. But so you got to figure out what you want to do as far as what, if you're going to try to engage and you believe in this 20 books to 50K thing, there's people writing books before AI. There were people who were writing books in 2 to 3 months and then dedicating part of their day to the publishing of those for a month, getting them out while they started writing their next book. And they were putting out 3 to 4 books a year comfortably. And people are doing that. Are they fantastic books? Maybe not. But if they're making them, if each book's making them $10,000 a year, then if they write 20 books, they're making $200,000 a year. If each book makes them $5,000 a year, which is only $500 a month per book or so, then they're making $100,000 a year. So that's their goal. They always got this goal in mind. If they want to make a living as a writer, they're saying, okay, I got my next book, and series are a big hit. So if you write a romance series or fantasy series or whatever, once you hook the readers, now the trend is the first book always sells the most, and the second book sells the second most, and the third book sells the third most, and it goes down from there. So you have to recognize that. And at some point you might want to end the series and start another series because the first book always sells the most. So you have to figure that out, but it's all about, you have to write to market. If you write to market, you'll have a higher percent chance of doing what you want to do, which is make a living as a writer. The guy who wrote Jack Reacher didn't write romance, and he did quite well. And he's a lawyer. And so there's definitely the exceptions. And the guy who wrote The Terminal List, who was a SEAL, he sounds like he had some luck in his life because he knew he had a SEAL friend who was doing stunts for Chris Pratt. And that guy put the book in front of Chris Pratt's face while they were shooting the scene or whatever. And Chris Pratt said, I love this book. Not only do I want to be the actor, do I play the part, but I want to produce it. And the next thing you know, it's on Amazon and it's a hit. So there's obviously some luck involved. There's connections, there's marketing, there's social media. It's hard to sell a book even to a big 5 publishing company nowadays for nonfiction if you don't have some kind of marketing plan that you can support with your amount of followers or your knowledge of Fox News and CNN, and being able to reach out to producers and say, hey, I got this book I just put out. It's about the Afghan withdrawal. And oh yeah, it's big news. Come on our show and we'll talk about that because you're the second man. Actually, you wrote a book on it. So being able to reach out to those people because he was already someone they would call to comment on other things. And so he had these connections. So when he wrote the proposal, he sent in 2 or 3 pages of, these are the following shows that I know I can be in because I've been on them before and I know the producers. That was a big pull for the publishing companies. That's why they bid on his advance so much, because they knew that he could reach out to these people, and he had proof because he had the videos and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'd like to understand from the stuff that we've talked about, and even hearing what you're just saying now, traditional publishing doesn't sound super attractive. So with the big 5 or some of their satellites, partly because you may or may not ever make any money from it, even if they pay you in advance. I guess you've made that, but
yeah, if you get paid $200,000, it may make millions for the publishing company, but not too many people make $200,000 from a book.
Yes.
So if they're going to pay you $30,000 for the book that you already wrote, and then they take it off your hands, because there's no guarantee that they'll make that $30,000 back. So people sell. The guy who wrote Operation Pineapple Express, Scott Mann, got an option for a movie after his book came out, and they dropped, I don't know how much they dropped. Let's just say they dropped $200,000 for the option to make the movie, and the option's good for 2 years. Then the writer's strike happened. He got the $200,000. The writer's strike happened. They couldn't do the movie, and then he got the rights back, and now he can go find someone else to do the movie, but he got to keep the $200,000. So it's all kind of a weird gamble in a way. If you get money up front, will you make more money on the back end if you believe in it? Maybe, but who knows?
Here's something I've observed in looking at online content creation, like videos and podcasts and articles. Just because you've got a good product does not mean it's going to be successful. And I don't know how that relates to books as well. You could write a superlative book in your view and in everyone else's view. Wow, this is really a wonderful thing. That does not mean it's going to be a bestseller, right? It does not mean it's going to take off and earn you a lot of money. And that part is also, I think, hard for people. And a poorly written, let's say, or a not hugely, yeah. What I'm trying to get at is I don't think there's always a straight line correlation between who decides whether a book is good or not and is high quality. If people are buying it, then that book is something that people want. And you can have a book that everyone agrees is educated and intelligent, well written, and has a fine plot, whatever, checks all the criteria, and still doesn't attract people's interest. So there's a bit of alchemy and luck involved, or is that not correct? Is it really just finding your market? And this is a repeatable, reliable approach that one can take. It's not easy, it's work, but it's, guesswork.
So let's just use the New York Times bestseller list. It's graded by the week, how many books you sold in a week, including pre-sales. If you market the book, get on your social media, my book's coming out, buy the book now. And then the book launches on day one and you sell whatever. And then over the week, if you sell about 5,000 books in that first week, you'll probably be on the bestseller list. But it depends on what else is on the bestseller list.
Right.
Piece of Operation Pineapple Express, the book came out. It was on bestseller list for the first week. And then the Queen died. And next week, 18 books on the royal family came out. And a lot of them got into the bestseller list that pushed everybody else out. And he got pushed out. Would he have been on there if Queen hadn't died and all the royal family books had come out? I don't know. Maybe. You never know. So it's also, there's a little bit of timing involved in luck, right? And then, go ahead.
I was going to ask, I've heard from some authors who seem to be well established and famous that the New York Times bestseller list is not a purely objective representation of sales, that they will exercise now ideological decisions of, we don't like that author, we're not even going to bother counting it. That sounds outrageous to me, but I've heard it from enough people now who said, you know what, here's my numbers. Here's the numbers of the books that are on that list. I've outsold them like 4 times and they won't even consider me for the list. That's become more polarized in the US, at least, that people they're willing to not consider certain stuff. So
this is another difference between traditional and self-publishing, right? So if you're self-publishing, you're not in normal sales counting thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's look at Brandon Sanderson. I don't know if you've read him, one of the most famous science fiction. So he did a Kickstarter for his books over COVID. He made $40 million on Kickstarter. All right. That's a lot of books sold. And his book didn't make the bestseller list because he sold them on Kickstarter. He sold them himself. He had them printed. He put them in a garage somewhere. He hired 50 people to mail them for him or whatever. I don't know how many he hired. But most of that was his profit. He didn't have to pay an agent. He didn't have to pay a publisher. He didn't have to pay 30% to Amazon. Though he had to pay 10% to Kickstarter and the rest of it was his. And then he had to pay some people to help him push it out the door because I think $40 million of books is probably a big investment in time to mail, but he had to mail it to everybody. But his book's not on the bestseller list because how are they going to count the books? Where are they going to count it? There's no way for anyone to get those statistics. So in that case, but you're right. As far as some ideological stuff in there going, we're not going to put your book out there because we think your book is wrong or something. We don't care if people read it or not. I don't know if that's going on or not, but there is something to be said that's the other thing, right? If you're traditionally published, those are the books that people that they put in Barnes and Noble because they're going through those publishing companies to get the book sent to the company. Now, does that mean someone can't order your book go to Barnes and Noble and then they look up the book and they can't order it and have it waiting for you? No, they can absolutely do that and they will. And in some cases, if you show up and you sold a lot of books and you're self-published and you said, hey, I'm going to be in town. Do you mind if I do a book signing? They're like, yeah, we'll order a bunch of books and then we'll make the money from the books and you'll get a percentage. I don't know how that works, but basically that's happened too. However, if you want to see your book in the airport, if you want to see your book in the top 10 bestseller lists, part of Barnes and Noble, if that's what you want, then traditionally publishing is the way you really want to go. If that's the thing you want that you really envisioned for your life. If you want to make as a fiction writer, if you there's some fiction writers that get deals. Now there's just a really famous incident. I can't remember her name and there's no reason to call her out anymore, but she had a book deal and then she went online with 15 different emails and destroyed other authors out there, said, who would read this trash? This other book was so much better, and talk her book up and trash hers and give 1 star's views on Amazon and other rating systems out there. And she got caught and they took her book deal away and they didn't publish it. But obviously that can happen. People can just trash talk people. People don't realize that if you give like a 1 star, like I never give 1 stars after I read this article. If you give a 1 star on Amazon, it takes 20 or 30 5 stars to bring that 1 star to a 4, to bring everything to a 4 star. So you basically destroyed that person's, rating by giving it. And I've seen some people don't even comment, which is, I think if you're going to give a 1 or 2 star, you got to give some constructive criticism because that's the least you owe that author. And then the second thing is sometimes they put 1 star as like, it was a pretty good story, but there were some spelling errors, 1 star. And I'm like, so you're really destroying that guy may not never write a book again because you destroyed his rating on there for that book. And his other book's going to be attached to that. When he writes another book, it's going to be attached as far as people are going to say, what else has this guy written? Oh, he wrote that one. It's got 1.5 stars. So you just got to, I don't give, if it's an okay book, the least I'll give it is a 3 star. The only time I've given it something like a 2 or 1 star when it's been a waste of my money. Like, I can't believe I invested any time reading chapter 1. Because if it's a 1 or 2 star content thing, I'll stop reading. I won't finish it. And I may not even leave a rating because I don't want to destroy that guy's career. It depends on how bad it is. I haven't given a 1 or 2 star. Maybe I'm a better selector of books than other people. But if I read a book all the way through, I'll give it a 3 star. And then then I'll try to give it a 4 or 5, depending on how pleased I was with the reading experience. But it's really tough. It's tough out there for the authors because they want the stars. And I've seen some authors putting this article at the back of their books. What do the stars on Amazon mean? And just to give them so they can say, please don't give me a 1 or 2 star because it's so hard to get out of that pit.
So here's something I got 2 questions ready, and I want to make sure we cover some stuff that for people who came on this wondering for some nuts and bolts, how do I do it? We should also spend some time talking on that. But just to what you were talking about in terms of the power and impact of reviews, I guess I have a bias, and I have never explored it, but my bias would be to assume that for all the downsides we've talked about, one of the benefits of being published with one of the big publishers is there was some quality review. An editor who selected your book decided, oh yeah, I think this one is good, compared to many, many that they rejected. And then they go through the whole quality process, copy editing and making sure that it looks good. I guess I assume none of that is the case with necessarily a self-published book, because any idiot can publish a book and it might be good, it might not be good. But if I come to it, probably I have a bias that says, oh, here's a book on the top 10 bestseller list at Barnes and Noble. It must qualitatively, it's got to start at a 3, even though I might or might not like it because it's gone through all of these steps before it even got to me. And I'm just saying that's my total layperson. I've never thought about this before, but I guess I'm assuming because it got accepted, it went through all of that, it has to be a better book. So there you go, for what it's worth. Whereas I don't assume that with a self-published book. I assume, oh, this week Randy vomited out a story about his dog and maybe it's good, maybe it's not, but I don't have any predisposition for assuming that it's going to be good. You don't have to comment on that if you don't want. That's just my irrationality. And you can if you want, though. And then I'll get to my second question. Go ahead.
I think there's some validity to that, though I've read some trash books published by publishers. Well, and then the good thing about so the reason you see these kind of overpriced digital books is because the publishers control the price. So you may see, and sometimes I've seen digital books that are more than the print books, which is ridiculous in my head, right? And you don't see many publisher books, unless they're old and they're just trying to make money on Kindle Unlimited, for instance, because Kindle Unlimited doesn't pay very much money. It pays by page. Now you'll see some, but authors that control their books may put their first book on it. And things are changing because people are realizing there's strategies. If you have a 5-book series, that's good. And your 5th book's coming out, then maybe you'll make the first 2 books on Kindle Unlimited so that people can read those for free and you'll market them and you're like, oh, this is a good series. And then they'll get to the fourth book and they're like, I'm going to buy this one, but it was so good. Yeah, I'll buy it. Okay. So that's that. There's obviously some strategies there, right? But you'll rarely see, first or second books in a series that big publishers got that they're available on Kindle Unlimited, because that's not where they make their money. So that's something to think about. I think there's also, you can see samples in Amazon now. So you can read the first chapter and say, this is not a good book. I don't care what they said in the blurb. It did not really delivering for me. You can also listen to sample audibles. I think the rating system is a little skewed by bad people sometimes, but if it's got 5,000 reviews and 5-star and an average of 4 or 5 stars, people liked it. And most people don't have 5,000 friends. And really, if you have 5,000 people that don't have reviews, you probably had 25 or 30,000 reading it. You got to, and also we got about 15 minutes left, and maybe this is a 2-parter, but we could talk about libraries, right? So Amazon, if you publish straight to Amazon, you're probably not going to get into the library, but there's other companies that you can use that'll get you into like Overdrive. So your digital book will be available in libraries and things like that, which is people can try your books out at the library and then they can buy your new book when it comes out because it won't be available in the library for a while or something like that. So I'd say that what you're saying is not necessarily untrue. However, and I think you have too. I've got a bunch of books that I own that I never read because they weren't what I thought they were going to be, or they weren't written as well as I thought they would be. So
it goes, you're right, Randy. And it goes to what I was saying before about you can't tell the quality. The success of a story isn't necessarily related to the quality. And here too, we have to say the source of the book, whether it was self-published or published by one of the big publishers, is also not a guarantee. There might be some tendencies one way or the other, but really you can get wonderful and terrible work on both sides. In terms of timing, I guess we got to make a call about how we want to continue. I think there's probably more stuff to talk about here. Maybe we do this in a 2-parter. For me, the part that I would be interested in as a person who's not super experienced in this area is, how hard is it? How hard is it to publish your own book? Is it, there's one app for that and I go, or do I have to do a ton of work? Do I have to learn and become an expert in 15 different things? You've talked before about covers and about marketing and about, I got to know how to work with Kindle Unlimited and libraries. And there's just in the last 5 minutes, you've said so many things that make me want to say, hey, wait a minute, you got to tell me more about that. Is that hard? How do I figure it out? Does someone tell me? Is that what I pay you for? So I think there's probably some good stuff to explore when it comes to, now we've set the stage. I'd really be interested in, if you think it's appropriate, getting through some of the nuts and bolts. So I can pay someone to do it. I do it myself. So anyway, that's what is on my mind right now, Randy.
I would say tune into the next episode. We're going to give you most of the nuts and bolts because it'll take longer than I have right now, but I'll give you the basics of your question, which was, can you do it all yourself? Absolutely. It takes time. It takes time. And also, if you don't have any taste for your cover, we've talked about covers before, and I'll talk about covers in the next episode when we go through the nuts and bolts. If you're not good with judging art and cover and stuff like that, then maybe you're not the right person for that. But you involve your friend, your family, your wife, and they can help you out. And there are people that will make the cover based on your concept. Like you write them, hey, this is what my book's about, and give them some comparison titles. Like it's just like Jack Reacher, but with a woman and a dog and a llama. And you're like, okay, I gotcha. And then they'll do a couple options for you. And you can pay anything from $50 to $500 to $1,000, depending on the artist and the reputation of the artist and things like that. And then formatting is an issue, different formatting requirements for print and digital. And then if you want to do Audible too, if you want to do some kind of audiobook, then there's requirements for a studio like sound and things like that, unlike our podcast. And so our podcast will be more of like a self-publishing thing. So
can I put pictures in, and how does that work if I'm doing?
Put pictures, but if you read on a Kindle, the pictures are really small. And also there's a download fee. So let's say you sell your book for $5. If you have a less than I want to say 1.5 megabytes and your book takes less than 1.5 megabytes, it costs like 15 cents or something like that. I got to look it up again, but it costs 15 cents. So every time you sell a book, 15 cents goes to Amazon for a digital download fee. But let's say you put in a bunch of photos as like a center insert, then it's like a 5 megabyte thing. So now you're paying 50 cents. So your 50 cents of your profits going away every time. So you might want to keep the photos in your print book and then put some information in there saying, hey, I have a bunch of photos on my webpage. Go to this link. And then you can see the photos if you're interested in seeing, like I had an artist draw my world and my characters, or if you're nonfiction here, like the memoir I just did, the guy had a bunch of photos from his time in Iraq. And so he had 20 photos. And so he's going to put them on his webpage and say, hey, go to this page. You can see all the photos of what I'm talking about, things like that. So you have some options. You can do it yourself. And we can talk about that next time. You can do the whole thing yourself. It doesn't take that long. If you want it professionally formatted, there's a learning curve, or you have to pay someone. This guy wanted a special image at the end of each chapter. And now someone has to insert that and format it right and stuff like that. Hey, if you want like a large capital letter at the beginning of every paragraph of your chapter, if you want a little image around your chapter 1, that all requires some knowledge of Adobe InDesign, or there's a bunch of other programs that can help you with that, which there's a learning curve to, and it can be frustrating. Or you can hire someone off Fiverr, or you can hire someone like me who advertises that we help format for you. Most of the time, I'll even include it with my editing services because it doesn't take me long to do it. And then I'll just roll it in and say, yeah, I'll do it for you. And then hopefully you'll come back and do a second book with me or something like that. So that's the second phase. So you got the cover, you got the formatting, and then you upload it. And to tell you the truth, there's videos. Amazon wants you to work with them. So they have step-by-step videos on how to do all this stuff, how to upload your photo or your cover, and what the prerequisites of your cover are, and how to format it. A lot of these companies have formatting software that's available to you for free if you publish with them. I don't think Amazon does, but I can't be sure. I don't remember, because I use something else. But it's basically all this stuff can be done pretty easily. It can be done in a couple hours, probably less. And once you get familiar with it, it's even less. You have to put your bank information in there. You might have to get an ISBN number, though you don't even have to do that with Amazon anymore for digital books. And then you're published. There it is.
All right. So that sounds enticing, Randy. And I hope we can come up with a checklist for next time, which says, all right, here's big picture, 10 things you got to think about. And then we get into the details on some of them that you've found interesting and where people have needed to spend more time. So I think there's some good stuff here. Thanks everybody for listening. I hope this gave you a sense of, at a high level, the world of publishing. We covered a lot of ground, not in a super organized way, but nonetheless, we hopefully got some good points across. And it was probably my fault, Randy, for going off on sidebars or sidetracks. So sorry about that. But
we covered the myths and misinformation out there, part of that. And that's part of what this series is about. And then next time we'll cover we'll give more information about how to go in the right direction and get it done.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.
We'd love to hear what you think. So please comment on the show with your thoughts. We read all of your comments.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for subscribing. See you next time.